TruthSeekah and/or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and/or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark's at it.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark's at it stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah Podcast, where we cover all things spiritual, esoteric, paranormal. Listen, we're going to get into ufology. We're talking about UAPs, and I think it's connected. My guest today, I was actually on his podcast. That's how I was introduced to him. And we got into the discussion. Are they interlinked? Are UFOs or UAPs interlinked with spirituality? And I approach it from the standpoint that they are. And we're going to approach it from a little bit of a different perspective. And we'll get into that when my guest comes on. But the term UAP, for the most part, is getting into physical craft and seeing physical sightings. And even though the spiritual side of ufology is there, most people who use that term or use UAP, they don't care about that side. They want to see boots on the ground, where something that you have a picture, something landed. So something very interesting that we're going to approach it, I would say, from a little bit different perspective than what the guests I usually have on here. You know, people who have been aboard craft and are communicating telepathically with ETs. It's going to be a little bit different. So make sure you buckle up. If you guys have any questions or comments for my guests or for me, make sure that you post them in the comment section while you're watching on the live stream as well. And for those of you listening on the podcasting apps, listen, just send an email. I'll try my best to be able to answer your questions there for those who aren't watching live. And you can also reach out to my guest. He has his own show and he does his own thing as well. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the Patreon supporters, everybody supporting my work through Patreon. This is listener supported, listener funded, doesn't exist without your help. So a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for believing in the work and partnering with me financially. It means the world. You guys are co-creators. So shout out to some of the latest patrons within the last week or so. I'm gonna give a shout out to Darla Throwbridge, Darla and her husband, who joined us on the School of the Mystics this past Thursday. It was great to meet you guys. Had a great time in conversation with you all. Also shout out to David A. Gill. David A. Gill, thank you for coming on, my friend. Many blessings to you. And Bob Ninja Ross or Rosa, I'm not sure. Thank you for coming on, believing in the work, and everybody else who's supporting. If you're watching on the YouTube live stream or any live stream video, you'll see the names that are scrolling across the bottom, and those are my people, man. So shout out to all of you guys. If you'd like to support, again, go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. You get access to my entire discography of music. It's over 200 songs, all about spirituality and UFOs and aliens and tie it all in there, mysticism, all that stuff. You can check that out. Also, our Thursday night School of the Mystics. And for now, we're doing them on the last Thursday of the month. We may try to incorporate some more stuff, some open Q&As where patrons get to join in and ask questions and be on the stream and stuff like that. So you get access to the Zoom link if you want to jump on and ask the guest or myself questions during the end of any podcast. That link is available on Patreon as well. And a bunch of really other cool stuff. Sunday morning breathwork is something we're doing. That's a tier. My book is there. My guided meditations. Anything that I do, I try to put it there for the Patreon partners. Check it out. What we got going on, we have a retreat November the 20th in Mobile, Alabama with myself and Illuminati Congo. I did an interview last night and the guy was trying to set up to kind of help me promote the retreat. He was like, I see on your website that you have a retreat coming up in the Congo, in Africa. I was like, I just started laughing. I was like, no. It's with my friend Illuminati Congo. So for those of you who don't know who he is, make sure you check out his work. If you know any of my music, I've done a lot of songs with him over the years, and I fell in love with breathwork because of what he brought to the table back in like 2011, 2012, before it got really popular. So shout out to John Hooks, aka Illuminati Congo. He will be at the retreat leading it with me. November the 20th. Tickets are limited. Go to TruthSeekah.com to find out more info. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's discussion. My guest on the TruthSeekah Podcast today is my friend Max
Moszkowicz, brother.
Moszkowicz. It's simple, but I butcher names too much. Bro, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm good.
How are you? Man. Doing well. And like I said, my publicist and social media manager reached out to you and found out what you were doing with your podcast and saw a connection there and got me on your podcast. We had an amazing talk. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. And for those of you who haven't heard it, go check out his podcast, which is
the Moszkowicz Podcast on YouTube.
And you've interviewed a lot of big name people in ufology and UAP and that kind of stuff, and you continue to do that. So make sure you guys check out his work there. Really, really well done and a fun podcast, mind you.
Thank you.
We're gonna jump into how you got started, your beliefs, and what does ufology mean to you, and all that good stuff. I'm gonna pick your brain, and we're gonna have fun. But for people who don't know who you are, again, we just mentioned your podcast. Just kind of give yourself a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table, and we'll just start there, bro.
Sure. My name is Max Moszkowicz. I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where I live. Talking to you live from the east side of Amsterdam right now. It's 4 p.m. in the afternoon over here. I'm a filmmaker, journalist, writer. And through my work as a journalist, I started covering UAP, UFO topic. And actually it took it took off since March, when I did my real big UAP interview with filmmaker James Fox. And after that, of course, I hope you guys have seen his film, The Phenomenon, which is phenomenal. So check that out. After James, I've interviewed Mr. Lou Elizondo, who ran the 8-tip program for the Pentagon for about 10 years, mostly in secrecy. But of course, he stepped forward after the New York Times article dropped in 2017, where American military men and women shared their footage, experiences on their encounters with UAP during their military service. And that is when I really took a deep dive into the topic as a journalist. And then for me, it started going really fast because of me deep diving into the topic. I found out there's a lot of incidents in my own country of the Netherlands. And there's a very high profile case over here from 1979. I've interviewed former Senator Harry Reid. I've interviewed military men like Sean Cahill, who was on the USS Princeton and, took footage of UAP encounters, radar data. I've interviewed scientists like Avi Loeb, who researched the Oumuamua. Finally, I can pronounce that. So there's a lot of things, and also I've made a lot of friends, like that beautiful man over there, the Truth,
Mr. Seekah,
and Mr. Seekah. And well, I don't know. I was born and raised here. I'm of Jewish heritage. My family is originally from Poland. My grandfather was born there. Yeah, and the cool thing about our talk, Truth, was that you are a man of you're a spiritual man, and me as a journalist, I always go for the nuts and bolts of a topic, but it is because of people like you, and really paying attention to what is being observed. The spiritual side is really something that is growing on me, and actually it makes me think about a lot of stuff I've experienced in my life. I didn't per se qualify as spiritual, but now for me turn out to be quite spiritual.
Wow, that's so cool. Hindsight's 2020, and that's amazing when the dots start to connect, even years later. Let me ask you this. So what does UAP mean for people who don't know?
Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. It's basically the new term for UFO, which is unidentified flying object. But within the DoD, Department of Defense, they would use the term UAP, because whenever someone puts in a FOIA request, they don't want there to be UFO. So it's UAP, but now it's out in the open.
Yeah. So, when I did the quick intro, just kind of giving an overview, do you see the difference there as far as people using that term, the UAP versus UFO?
Man, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
It's exactly the same. It's just that they don't want, whenever people do a FOIA request and they see the term UFO, they don't want them to freak out. Didn't want them to freak out. Now, most people know what UAP means, but it's like when I talked to the Dutch defense press guy, I asked, in my Dutch equivalent of a FOIA request, do you ever see UFO? And then they said, no, we don't see UFO, but we do see a lot of unknown, which is exactly the same. Yeah. So it's basically...
Well, it's almost like they're trying to make a distinction between the two. Again, because, just to be quite honest with you, in UFO, you get a lot of crazies. You get a lot of people who come in and say, yes, I'm taking off world every night, and they speak to me. So people who are trying to do nuts and bolts investigations, you're kind of muddy in the water. So it's almost like, let's just use this term for the scientific research. Do you see that distinction being made as well, I guess?
Yeah, you're dead on. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. They want to stay away from the aluminum foil hat people. Although they really grow on me lately, but it's basically what it is. But I think it's a healthy thing to approach this as, sober as possible, see what's fact, see what's fiction, separate, what is real, what's not real. Mm-hmm. But then again, I do like to emphasize a little bit more on the spiritual side, as I'm months in researching this topic.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, there's factions that I guess come up, and they rival each other, and don't listen to them, and that's too far out. But when it comes to the spiritual side, or the UFO conspiracy sides as well, like the thing about it's like, because it's a huge niche, it's something that's been happening for a long time, but the fact of the matter is, like, if one of those people are telling the truth, if one of them are telling the truth about their encounters or their experiences, or being in communication telepathically, or receiving dreams and visions, or beings teaching them off world, it is far-fetched. It is out there. It is the stuff of fantasy, but truth is stranger than fiction, right? If one of them are telling the truth, then it makes it all worth it, I think,
Well, it's closer than you think, because now it turns out there was a huge research within the DoD, which was very secret. It was about remote viewing.
Yes.
if you know what that means, right? So remote viewing, which is directly connected to the UAP phenomenon, means there is a spiritual side, and they definitely investigated it. And so where there's smoke, there's fire. We always say.
Yeah. Yeah, and if they had branches of the government that looked into it and tried to train people in it, you know that there's something to it. There's something there for sure.
Damn right.
So for you, you've seen UFOs as well, right? Or UAPs? Yeah.
Well, I did see a very intelligently moving object in the Dutch skies, and I do have an experience, but I can't say if it's ET. I can't say if it's earthly.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw it,
Yeah.
and it did something with me. I'm not gonna lie. And it was very fascinating because it was in the time of my life where I was on a sort of a, how do you call it, crossroads or something. There was something very emotionally impactful happening, and I hear this story more and more that there's, whenever you're vulnerable mentally, it's like there's a switch that comes off and some filters just drop, right? And I think that might have happened to me. I'm still not sure. I'm kind of agnostic in this, but let's say I'm a student in life, so I'm willing to learn.
Yeah, for sure. And that's all you got to be, right? To be a truth seeker,
That's true.
Because if your mind's already made up, then you can't, I think that you obviously you can't learn, but I don't think you're apt to teach. If your mind is, if you're just stuck on it, like this is the only truth, or this is exactly what's going on. Our military are doing experiments and that's it. Well, maybe that's part of it, right? But there's other stuff that could happen. I think all possibilities exist within reality, but in ufology and UAP as well.
Well, human beings have a very primitive reflex, and that is they tend to have the need to explain everything to something they know,
Yes.
right? We still do this, but like in the older days, religion was always something to go to, right?
Yeah.
So if you see something in the skies, it's angels, it's demons, it's something godly, it's something divine, right? It's from the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, whatever you believe in. But so the humans have the need to explain, to place something in their categorized mindset, right? But I think it's also very healthy to just be and not label something directly and experience something and just sit on it for a while, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too, but that's almost impossible for anyone, because we have a file cabinet, and we got to put that in the Christian file, the Muslim file, the crazy file, right? So we know who these people are or exactly where they're coming from. We have to give a name to something, and bringing up the Bible, that was one of the things in the Bible that God like commanded Adam to do. Was like, hey, I'm going to give you all of this stuff and animals and mountains and all that stuff, but you have to give it a name. You have to associate a thought and an idea with it. And we're still doing that today,
And by the way, I don't disqualify religion as something that could be directly involved with what we see. It might be, right? Yeah. If you're a man of God, God created the whole universe, everything we know. So if there's something out there, it's also created by God, if you believe in that. But the problem is, we tend to think we are the center of the universe, and there's only one form of life. But it takes me to Galileo, right? Galileo, he got into it with the Catholic Church, with the Pope in his days. They refused to look through his telescope because it would prove we are not the center of the universe. So that would be contradicting to the beliefs at the time, maybe still, but I think, there's more.
Yeah, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. When you think about Richard Dolan, he put out an article or a video that kind of went viral about, making that distinction between the UAPs and UFO community, and how, the people who tell the grandiose stories of being taken off world and being taught for 20 years, and then they come back and only 3 minutes have passed and they've lived several lifetimes. And for some reason, it seems like those stories that seem steeped in fantasy seem to outweigh or get shared as much, or if not more, than the nuts and bolts stuff. Like, people are drawn to the fantasy side of it. But then again, I don't want to do a disservice for people, if someone who is, if they're telling the truth, right? And you're like, yeah, we don't believe you, kind of thing,
Yeah, this is a big problem, because there are a lot of attention seekers.
Yes.
And of course they grasp this with both hands, and yes, now I have my platform and it's real, and everything I've been telling has to be true now.
Yes.
But there's also another thing. A lot of those people who were talking about being abducted by UFOs or seeing them or encountering them are very silent now, because there's no fun if you are not anymore the how do you call this, the one eye in the land of the blind.
Mm-hmm.
But now there is actual proof of it existing, and it's you can see it, there's footage. So that's not interesting to them. They want to be
exclusive.
Exactly.
Hey,
yeah.
I have a little bit of that in me that I have to fight with myself, branding something and being a pioneer, and then it catches on and gets popular, and then you just leave it. So I'm on to the next thing. So I've had to check myself. No, stay in it. We're in this thing for the long haul. We're not in it just because there's charlatans and the water's muddy now. Maybe we need to clean the swamp, drain the swamp, if you will.
Yeah, true. And I guess there's a paradigm shift going on, right? Because a lot of the people, like what I was saying, there's a lot of attention seekers, but there's also a couple of people and a couple of cases that are very compelling and need to be investigated, and say about 2-3 years ago, those people would be disqualified as nutcases, and now they're taken very, very seriously, because what I said before, there turn out to be programs like remote viewing, and there has been a lot of investigation into those things. So to me, right now, I'm open-minded. And then again, there's a lot of people, heavyweights in the DoD or in the political spectrum, who are basically UAP ambassadors, turn out to be full of poo-poo. So.
Yeah, in both fields. I know. I made a status comment last night and went back and looked at it about, it was about psychics and prophets or whatever, kind of being the same thing. And there was several comments that psychics are charlatans. Psychics aren't real. They're charlatans. They just want your money. But in every field that you're into, you're going to have the charlatans. Like, I don't care what it is. You're going to have the person who just shows up with these stories who, somebody that my, one of my producers here, Richie, who's with us listening, he always says, listen, what is your lineage? I need to know where you, who taught you? Where did you get this from? Kind of thing, when you have people just show up as experts. But if you do some research on some of these people, you can look into their past. You can look into what websites they were visiting or parts of forums that they were a part of, taking notes. And now they're ready for the limelight to repeat somebody else's story, Right. And they're good storytellers. So, I mean, you got that going on.
Yeah. Well, there's a perfect example, and that is Mr. Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar, if you don't know, came out in the late 80s, proclaiming he was a scientist back engineering a UFO for the Pentagon, for the Secret Services or DoD, whatever. And there was a character murder on that guy on a scale you won't believe. right? Media fell over him. The military put out statements. He was a fraud. He was a shaman. He was a liar. And time lapse, turns out about maybe 80-90% of what he was claiming is true. There is a Area 51, which they denied. There are new secret weapons being developed. There's a lot of things going on, and through my research and things I've encountered, well, Mr. Bob Lazar might be onto something. He might. I'm not saying he's not a liar. But I'm certainly not saying what he's saying might not be true. It could be true.
Yeah. I mean, everybody brings something different to the story, and everybody has a piece of the puzzle. So,
also Bob Lazar had a couple of things that weren't in his favor. For example, after they character murdered him, they also made him disappear in every American system. So all of his high school diplomas were just gone. He didn't have any bank accounts anymore. The guy couldn't work anymore. He simply didn't exist on paper anymore. He was like a walking ghost. Now, one of the things they used to discredit Bob Lazar is because he started a brothel. But the man had to make some money. I don't say it's like ethical what he did, but you need to eat.
That's hilarious. Well, they're gonna find everything on you. When you step into the limelight, you're if your life isn't an open book, like, they're gonna do the research and call you out. And we don't know how much of it is real. We don't know how much of it is them just trying to discredit you. And I have people in mind that I think of when we talk about some of these people with these stories, these grandiose stories, and then they do the research and we're like, oh yeah, you're just repeating someone else's story or whatever the case is. And there's people who are good storytellers, and we got to decipher through the charlatans and all that kind of stuff. But something we did talk about on your podcast, we brought it up, and you got my take on it, was the situation with the children in Africa at the school.
Right.
That so you want to talk about that? I just want to get your take on something like that, and that kind of maybe brings the I think a situation like that would bring both worlds together. It would bring the spiritual, and it would bring the nuts and bolts side as well. So you want to tell that story? Sure.
Yeah. Again, if you guys haven't seen James Fox's film The Phenomenon, please see it, because I think the Rua Zimbabwe case is one of the most compelling cases there is. And this is what happened. I think it was 1994. There was a elementary school in Zimbabwe, Africa. Apparently, a spaceship landed right next to the how do you call this, the playing square of the school? How do you call it?
Playground.
Yeah, playground. All right. Sorry, I'm not an English native, so sometimes I might be struggling with finding words. But about 60 to 100 children were witness to a spacecraft landing right next to the playing ground, and two aliens coming out of the craft and telepathically communicating with the kids. And they had a very clear message, which was, stop messing up your planet, you're destroying it, and stop killing each other, stop making nuclear weapons. And basically those kids are now adults, and they are now spread all over the world, and they stick to their story. And there was a psychiatrist, John Mack, who actually interviewed all of these kids. He was a Harvard professor, and he said there's absolutely no case of mass hysteria or kids, working each other up. He says, their story is consequent. It's how do you call this? He had
cohesive. Yeah.
Cohesive. Thank you, sir. So there's no reason to think they made it up. And as adults now, and we're talking about 100 kids who are, and about 100 kids are now adults, are sticking to that story. So it's very, very compelling. And there's a little Dutch connection because, of course, I dove into it. And turns out a Dutch camera crew went down to Ruwa, Zimbabwe a little over a year later, interviewed some of those kids, and I got hold of that footage because it was broadcasted in the 90s on a Dutch paranormal show on national television. And I talked to the host, she's still alive, and I talked to the producer, who's also still alive. And they, without a doubt, believe these kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome to be able to go back and be able to talk to those people, man. So, you know, to have this conversation with somebody like you, like, listen, I feel like I'm talking to, and it's essentially another version of myself, because you're not just, it's not an echo chamber. Like, you're talking to a lot of people, and then now you get to kind of make your assessment. You get to say, I've talked to 50 people who are UAP, and I've talked to these people. Here's what I believe. And maybe, you know, the more people that you talk to, you're getting different pieces of the puzzle, and what you believe may shift or change a little bit. So to be able to talk to another podcaster, another journalist, like, you know, I feel like we can connect, because, okay, who do you think was telling you the truth, and who do you think was lying to you, kind of you know, situation. Yeah. But it seems like the majority of the people that you've talked to have been like legit, real deal people, even though that they've been some really big names in ufology or UAPology.
you just invented a new term.
It's gonna come.
UAPology.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I mean, you've talked to some of the big dogs already, you know, and you've made friends with them, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Some of them are dear friends, but some of them, you know, I look, I'm a softie. I don't expose people like publicly, but some of them who are like of some stature are quite famous.
Yeah.
I you know, disappointed me because I found out they were lying.
Oh.
So yeah.
No, so you're talking about some of the people that you've had on your show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But fortunately, most of them are truthful, I think, because there's facts and there's data and, you know, files, basically.
So as a journalist, you probably, again, a host and, you know, an interviewer, a conversationalist. I'm sure that you approach it maybe a little bit like me as a skeptic, because you're like, hold on, like, I'm a skeptic for all of it until, you know, you give us something really that we can work with, you know, versus like, I just believe whatever you tell me. Yeah, I traveled off world 7 nights this week, and they've given me, you know, this t-shirt to come home with. It's like, let me see the t-shirt, man, you know.
Yeah, that's so true, man. I got to be honest with you. It was when the New York Times dropped the article in 2017. I was one of the few journalists who thought, okay, so if this is something real, this is going to change mankind. It's going to change everything. You know, we're not alone. We're not the center of the universe. There might be a more technologically advanced life form, you know, penetrating our skies. So to me, this was fascinating. So I had to dive into it. But here's the problem. So I write for a couple of papers, magazines in my country. So I went to a couple of editors in chiefs, and, you know, without a distinction, they all turned my articles down about the topic. They just no. I don't care if it's the New York Times. I don't care if it's the Pentagon. This is not real. You know, you're gonna. It's basically they said it's career suicide what you're doing right now. But I'm a stubborn little ... And I waited. I kept on nagging. then one of the chiefs of the magazine I freelance for, the New Review magazine in the Netherlands, got fired. A new one came, and this is when one of the last things Mr. Trump did before he was kicked out of the White House was that he implemented the 180-day ultimatum for the Secret Services and the military to disclose their secret files to the Congress, and if it wasn't harmful for Homeland Security, also to the general public. So now this was something for me I could convince my editor-in-chief with. Look, dude, there is going to be a 180-day ultimatum. There's something coming out. Let me cover this because, let's see what happened on the timeline. And this timeline is basically 80 years old. It's way older, but if you count from, let's say, the nuclear testing in 45, that's where there's definitely a very highly UAP activity seen by military worldwide, actually.
Yeah. So you broke that, and now it's, we're talking about being a forerunner on some things that people abandon it. Now, like, you were a forerunner on that, obviously. You had the inkling to bring it to mainstream.
Well, in my country, in my country, it was very interesting because this editor-in-chief, he's a really cool guy because he gave me carte blanche. I got to cover 3 full editions on UAP consecutively, which is crazy. Nobody covered it in my country, and there something miraculous happened because as soon as I started covering it, and I started talking to the heavyweights in the American DoD, the biggest Dutch newspapers immediately started covering it too. But what they didn't do, they wouldn't talk to any one of the key players. They would just copy paste anything from American media. But I talked to the people, So, and at some point, this was a couple of months ago, like the Dutch equivalent of CNN or BBC News approached me, and they wanted to talk to Lou Elizondo, and I was the only guy in Holland who had the contact with Lou. But there was an interview on national Dutch television watched by millions of people, and Lou told the story, which was amazing. Yeah,
I think that's how we found you. I think that's how Maria reached out to you, because she saw you had an interview with him, and she's like, let's get him on. It's gonna be awesome. And so, man, listen, we got to go to a quick commercial. Take a quick commercial break. But everybody in the comment section, post questions, comments, all that stuff, and we'll take comments when we come back on the other side of the break. Any questions that you guys have for Max or myself, go ahead and post them, and we'll be back with Max right after this. Wow, so the throne room meditation, man, this was just like a new level for me of creating encounter. Really the process behind it is going in for myself, having an encounter with the Lord, tapping into the Spirit and getting in His presence, and really just petitioning the Father's heart and saying, God, what would you say to them? If I'm bringing these people with me here, if they're doing this guided meditation and we're going through this journey, we're having fun, we're seeing things, we're experiencing new feelings and emotions and sensations, what would you say to them? So it's channeling the Father's heart and relating it back to the people. So man, it's just a beautiful encounter. And I remember when I wrote the first one, I was so excited about it, and it was just God speaking to my heart. I was able to channel the Father's heart. And I would read the script to people because I was just so excited while I was working on it. And every time that I would just read the script, the presence of God would just invade me, and I just burst into tears, and I couldn't even read it. I'm just like, let me copy and paste it and send it to you. But every time I listen to it, I'm immediately translated back into the throne room of God, and everything's good there. That's the place where everything is okay, where in the scriptures it says that we are to hide under the shadow of the Almighty. This is the throne room of God. This is the place that we can encounter for ourselves, but this is also a place in which we dwell. So a part of us is always there, and we have access to that. Now, there's people who have never encountered this before in their life, and it's a totally new experience for them. And almost every time I get a testimony back from someone, they just say how God wrecked their lives, that they didn't know what they were getting into. The next thing they know, they're in the presence of God, wrapped up in His glory. He's communicating His love to them, and it just totally wrecks their lives. So make sure you check out the throne room guided meditation, visualization that I brought to the table.
There are things that go bump in the night. Pull up a chair. Don't be scared, for you have many friends unaware on the TruthSeekah Podcast.
TruthSeekah Podcast.
TruthSeekah.
He seems like a nice guy.
You're listening to the TruthSeekah Podcast. Now, back to the show.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
Max, let's change it up a little bit.
Sure.
Which I think all things are connected again. Let's talk about the paranormal, man. Have you had any experiences or beliefs in ghosts and in spirits and things like that?
Yeah, I do think so. In hindsight, again, there's things I can't explain. I don't want to label them, but there's definitely things happening in my life and things I feel, that you could label paranormal or unexplainable. Definitely, yeah. Yeah. So you would like me to elaborate on that?
Sure. Because I mean, you've mentioned it a couple times. It almost seems like you're going through a transition, or some things are getting your attention that you're tying together, right?
Yeah. So throughout my life, I think in retrospect, I think I'm quite highly receptive for energy, I guess. And for example, whenever I've had these really strange experiences, whenever somebody's really close to me, I can tell when they're in distress or I feel something, give them a call. Turns out it's true. I pick up on things, can't explain it how. But I think the one of the most freaky things I've ever experienced was something that happened. If you look here, these boxing gloves right here, those were given to me by my grandfather when I was about 5-6 years old. Now 4, 5, 6 years old or something, and never thought anything of it, but just held on to them. I think they look really cool. It's like these 30s boxing gloves or something.
Put them up.
yeah, fighting Irish. Yeah. But a little piece of history of my family. We're of Jewish heritage, but my grandfather was deported to the death camps. He spent about 2-3 years in Auschwitz death camp. They were deported in 1942, of course, arrested in Holland. On arrival, immediately, his mother, sister, little brother were put to a gas chamber, murdered. My grandfather and my great-grandfather survived almost up until liberation. But what we found out about 2 years ago, a writer wrote a biography about my grandfather, and you have to imagine that my grandfather never talked about the war, right? Never talked about what he experienced in the camps. You can just imagine the horror. It was horrific. So I just remember as a child, he had like the number on his arm right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember asking him, Zaidi, Zaide, which is Yiddish for grandfather, I said, what is that on your arm? And he said, oh, that's just my phone number, so I don't forget. So he made a joke out of it. But what turned out, this biographer found out, was how my grandfather actually survived the death camps. He boxed for the entertainment of Nazis.
Wow.
So he had to fight Nazis for a little bit more food or some warm clothing or something. It's very, in my country, if you look up Max Moszkowicz Sr., and the book is called The Boxer. It's in Dutch. I hope there's going to be an English translation, but that's my grandfather. He's still alive, by the way. He's 95 years old. So to go back to the boxing gloves, imagine we just know he boxed in the camps since 2 years, right? Since the guy found out about it. Now, when I was about 16 years old, I moved from the south of Holland to a northern part of Holland because my father started living there, and we went where he could provide for us. But you have to imagine, and maybe you can identify with this truth, is I had a very, very thick southern accent. So the kids in the north would make fun of my southern accent. And to put a little bit of context to the story, where I was from, I was kicked out of about, I think, 2 or 3 high schools. And this was basically, in Holland, my last chance. So if I was going to be kicked out of one more school, there would be huge consequences for me. So I was bullied there in this new school in the north because of my accent, and I couldn't do anything about it because, if I would have been kicked out of school, I was in a lot of trouble. And I remember being in my room at night reading a comic or something and being really, really frustrated because I couldn't really do anything the way I was used to doing things. So, and these gloves were hanging right above the door of my bedroom, right? So I remember being really, really frustrated, lying in my bed, reading this comic, not really reading, just, going, having all these scenarios in my mind. It's like what you do whenever you encounter a very negative experience with someone, you just fantasize about what you could have done or what you could have said, sure, right? It's right. So this is exactly what I was doing. And out of the blue, these boxing gloves just go puff.
Wow.
My window wasn't open. I was lying in my bed, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't asleep or dreamt it. So this is by far the most freaky thing I've experienced in my life. And it didn't scare me at all because it was a very clear message. I was thinking about being very frustrated. Like I really wanted to, come up for myself. I wanted to fend for myself, and I wasn't allowed. But the message was, to me, it was, don't worry, do what you have to do tomorrow. And that's what I did. And I didn't get kicked out of school.
So what do you mean by you did what you had to do? You just stayed to yourself, or you did what you wanted to do?
I did what I really, 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 really wanted to do.
Okay.
And basically, I kicked the kid's ass. So.
Yeah. And you didn't get in trouble.
Yeah. No.
Like, go for it. I got you one. I'm going to make sure that, that you're going to be taken care of. Okay. Stand up for, our honor. Don't let nobody walk over you,
Exactly. And this is what my family is all about. It's about surviving. It's about fighting. It's about, never yield for tyranny,
yes.
Yeah. So now, fast forward to what I found out 2 years ago about my grandfather, who is alive, by the way. This happened when I was 16 years old in my room. I like to think that was my great grandfather, who was actually, like in the last moments of the war, didn't survive the war, because I don't know if you ever heard about the Death March.
Okay.
Which was when the Russians were about to take Auschwitz death camp. The Nazis, like they panicked. They took all of the prisoners because they know what they did. They tried to, destroy evidence, basically bodies, and it was a very rough march, because they had to walk from Poland to another camp in Austria, which was Mauthausen-Ebensee. And both my grandfather and my great-grandfather had to do the Death March. They called it the Death March because it was in wintertime. So, and you have to imagine people were already underfed, on the verge of exhaustion, death. And, my grandfather by that time was already what they call a Musulman, which means that it's the equivalent of a walking dead, like a zombie. It's like you're still alive, but there's no light in your eyes anymore. You just go on instinct until you fade. So what happened was, whenever somebody wasn't able to walk anymore, they didn't want them to talk anymore, for, in case the Russians, found them or something. So they would inject them with just with air, basically with oxygen, which causes thrombose, which causes cardiac arrest, which is a very cheap way of killing people. That's what happened to my great-grandfather. So just before liberation, he was murdered too. And my grandfather, who was sent to Auschwitz death camp with his family, he was about 16 years old. He was 19 when he was liberated. Walked to Holland in his inmate outfit, and started the family. Eventually became very successful, self-made man. Became a mob lawyer, and he got very, very famous in my country, and so this is the story. Wow,
what an amazing story, man! To tie all of that together and see how everything's connected too, And
nothing to do with UAP, by the way.
No, it's we start there, but we end somewhere else, man. Again, there's a lot of the whole paranormal side and supernatural and spiritual. Maybe one day down the road we find out that it is connected. That not necessarily nuts and bolts. UAPs and UFOs. There's a lot of lights in the sky. At nighttime, or spheres or orbs, or even translucent craft, right? There's a lot to it. What if we find out one day that those are spirits, that those are our ancestors and our grandparents watching over us and things like that? So not so far out of the realm of thinking by any means, that we are being watched over and taught from the great beyond. So there could be, it could be linked in. I think everything is linked in. Before we go here, change it up just a little bit more. It's not about UAPs, but I'm sure that it's linked somewhere. Let's talk about your diet and workout routine, your workout regimen, and so your gym routine, man. How do you stay fit and healthy?
Well, this is funny. Talking about my grandfather, I had an obsession with boxing and kickboxing since I was in my early teenage years.
Jean-Claude.
I started. Yeah. He's a Belgian guy.
You kind of look like him a little bit, man. Now that we say that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I guess I hope not Jean-Claude now, but the one in Bloodsport.
Exactly.
No, I started practicing Taekwondo when I was about 13 years old. My dad put me on karate when I was four years old, but that was too early. But when I was about 15 years old, I started kickboxing, and I'd like to say that the Dutch kickboxing, it's basically the norm now for stand-up fighting. And I've been practicing that off and on throughout my life. I still do it, actually, but now I'm gonna dive into something completely different, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm nothing on the ground. If you take me to the ground, I'm helpless. So if we stand up, I'm good. But talking about martial arts, I think spirituality is a huge factor in that, because it was also something for my grandfather, because after the war, he was a very he started practicing judo, and this is something he did throughout his life. And I think there's something very important in martial arts, and I think it's a spiritual side of it. It's meditational. It's opening your mind to other things. Trying to how do you say this in English? You always can do more than you think you can if your mind is set.
Push yourself, right? In a sense.
Push yourself, right? So I try to keep in shape, stay in shape. It's something.
How many days a week is your gym routine?
I try to go at least 2 times to the gym, and if I have the time, I'm a single dad, so I don't have too much time. I have to work, but if I'm not too tired, I try to go more than 2 times a week. Yeah.
Wow, good stuff. Yeah, I'm with you, man. The health and eating and diet and taking care of yourself and getting in the gym. It is a spiritual practice, man. Like if
you look in shape, dude. You look in shape. You rock the white gear. I like it.
Yeah, I've been slacking lately, though. I'll say that. So I need to go. I'm dressed for it right now, so I need to make sure that I go. But yeah, man, it is a spiritual practice. It is a way to, you hear people talk about it again, if they're depressed or if they're just not feeling it, make yourself go. And then 10 minutes into it, you're like, your body thanks you for working out and pushing yourself. And then you get in the mirror later, you're going to thank yourself,
Exactly. And, immediately you feel better.
Yeah.
For example, in October, we had the Amsterdam dance event, and I went a couple of times, and I had a little bit, I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of a hangover. And when you go to the gym, you sweat out all of those toxins,
Yes.
your mind gets to be in the right place. It's so important, man. And you live longer, you live healthy, and you're going to be happier. You're going to make all that testosterone. You're going to make all that, your blood starts flowing. It's so good.
Yeah. So how long? So that's your antidote for the hangover. Like it's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to go, but once you finally go, as long as you're sweating, your heart rate's up, you get some good water in you and stuff like that. You'll knock that thing out, right? And start feeling back to normal.
Yeah, you're going to be feeling very sorry for yourself the first 50 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But after that, you're like, oh, no, you're going to start feeling better and better and better. And when you go out of the gym, you sweat everything out, all the toxins, and you're a brand new guy.
Yeah. And if you don't go, you're probably going to feel like crap for the entire day. Like once you get older and you get a hangover, it's not when you're young and get a hangover where it's only until, 9, 10 o'clock. Like, you're not the same for the rest of the day. Like the whole next day, you pay for it. But yeah, get up, go to the gym, and sweat that stuff out of you. Get some nutrients and some good, water in you, like you said, and you're good as day.
I'm an old man. I'm 42 years old. Truth.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, man, you look great, dude.
Thank you. I try.
And so obviously, so we're talking about working out and we're talking about taking care of yourself, but it seems like your diet is a healthy balance of cigarettes and wine too, though, right?
Dude, I live. I like to enjoy life, but you have to find your balance. So
for sure,
I do enjoy.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. I do enjoy my alcohol. I do enjoy my cigarette. I do enjoy my occasional drug. I do that. I do that. Look, I'm in a very, very tolerant country. I get to do that.
Yeah.
But
Amsterdam, that's what you guys are known for over here anyway.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, if it's not prohibited, you're not bound to use it as excessively.
Exactly.
Because it's like, So, but I do try to eat healthy and be, how do you call it? Don't overdo things, right?
Yeah, productive and what's the word? Not tolerant.
Don't indulge.
Yeah, don't overindulge, and moderation is the key word.
Moderation. That was a
everything in moderation.
Everything
Occasional
in moderation.
drug in moderation. As long as it ain't going to spiral you out, man. Know yourself and know what you can do versus doing something that's calling you, that monkey on your back, that's going to cause you to spiral out. So I got those friends too, that if they touch any of that, even alcohol, like they can't because they're going to spiral out.
I have those friends too. People are programmed differently. You know, some of them can handle it, some of them can't. I have friends who got addicted. I have friends who I have a couple of friends who ended up in prison for murder. Yeah. But I have also friends who became doctors, lawyers, and
yeah. And the thing is, you can have a beer or a glass of wine with both of them, right? That was the interesting thing for me. I've got homeless friends that come over and we have a beer and I sit with them and I get on their level and we talk crap. And then I got friends who are millionaires who I can have a beer with too. And it's like the two polar opposites,
I can identify with that. It's like, I don't really feel I belong to a group or certain group or something, or like a class or ethnicity or whatever. I can be friends with anyone with a pure heart. And I don't care if you pick up garbage or if you save lives in hospitals or fight wars or whatever. If you're pure of heart, I can tell you're going to be my friend. And I'm going to like it even more if you have a sense of humor and we can have a beer.
Yeah. With the whole spiritual thing, like that was a big, hurdle to get over. It's like to show that side of you, because it can only be spiritual. It can only be meditation. Namaste. You drink alcohol, you eat steak, you do this. Like, it's some things that, we have a picture of what a monk looks like, but I got friends who are drunken monks. I got psychics who can only tap into that stuff if they freaking, drink half a bottle of Jack Daniels, and then they can freaking talk to spirits, they can bypass these, sensory things in their mind, and so, being authentic is the new spiritual, whatever that is, it is the envious thing that we've been taught that we couldn't be ourselves, no matter what that is,
Yeah, I don't think people should put boundaries on who you are as a person, Don't judge anyone, don't judge them on their lifestyle or whatever. Try to help them if they are harming themselves, if they're destructive, try to help. Don't try to change anyone. Change comes from within. It's when you want to be helped, you can be helped, and then reach out and try to help people. But it's always good to start a conversation and say, hey man, are you okay? And can I do something for you? Maybe. Let me help out.
Again, that's the weird thing about like being so open and being, apt to have a drink and be okay. Because not everybody can do that. And I've had those friends who were like dealing with sobriety, and then they came like, yeah, I can come over and have a couple beers. I'll be okay. And they can't. Because a couple beers lead to snorting pills in the bathroom. What are you doing, man? Don't do that. It's like, listen, I'm just having, a couple beers and you're freaking, no, wow. It's like some people drink to have, open up in conversation. Some people drink to forget, and being able to like, hey man, we can't do this with you, bro. Like you're freaking crazy. You need to go to church or something, man. You need help, dude. And so with some people, it's like, we can't do that.
Actually, my father was a drug addict. He was addicted to heroin for most of my life. I've experienced very bad things with my own father through his addiction. But, it was when he wanted to be helped, he could be helped. It took a while. It actually pretty recently it changed. He's like a walking miracle, by the way. He should have been dead years ago. He got addicted to heroin when I was about 4 or 5 years old or something. My parents split up. We had to go to him because it was mandatory because of the judge, the law, and we were privy to a very, very addicted man, and there was no one around to help us out, so I do think, I'm happy there's laws and there's, people who intervene whenever people are harmful to themselves or more importantly to others. But, being saved, being helped comes from within eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we learn, a good person, will learn from their own mistakes. But I think a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. Like you can see people on that path say, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. I could put 2 and 2 together to know that this outcome gets me here. And again, where we came from, whether it was dealing with drug addicts or alcoholics or whatever. Listen, my family, I come from an addicted family as well. And my brother was like my father figure in my life, and he, addicted to substance and dealing drugs and stuff like that. And it didn't work out good for him in the end. So to learn, okay, yeah. Don't do that, and just learn from the mistakes of others. Learn from my friends who drink to forget. Yeah, don't drink to deal with your problems and to just to feel something. And so
it's not the solution.
No, not at all.
It's not the solution. No. And I'm sorry to hear that. By the way, man.
Yeah, man. Free will is something that we all have, and we get to wake up and choose what we want to do. And my hope and what I do, that it's like, everybody can enjoy life, man, and not have to escape and not have to be privy to the small things, dude, that, we didn't get to see when we were growing up, and little things, nature, camping, families, the animals, like little small things that a lot of people in those realms take for granted, and they won't see the beauty in it, in the small things, which is what I think all of that has taught me anyway.
Yeah, there's multiple forms of addiction, for example, drugs are not the only addiction. There's people addicted to money, to material, to cars, economical success. They measure their happiness to whatever the amount of money in their bank account. But I think the real richdom, sorry about that. I really should stop smoking.
Yeah, smoke another one. That's what we used to say. So.
The real richdom in life, I think, is collecting beautiful experiences with your loved ones, spiritual revelations, be a student, be humble, be open to everything and everyone, feel connected to the energy that connects us all. That's how I think you'll find a path to real happiness if you get the tools to get yourself to be, how do you call it? Contained? No.
Content.
No, like happy with yourself.
Yeah, content. You're content with
yourself. Content.
Yeah,
content. If you're content with yourself, that opens up a lot of doors,
Yes.
Then you can really be open to real life experiences and enjoy your kids, enjoy nature, enjoy. Yeah, don't your ego is not going to be restricting you from real happiness.
Yeah. Such is the game of life, and it is my hope and my prayer that everyone gets to experience that at some point, and at some time, even if it does come late in life, that they do come around and it comes full circle, and they get to see the beauty and come to peace with their own demons, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. Shall I tell you a funny story? I don't know how much time we have.
Go ahead. Yeah, we got time for one more. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I was a troubled young man up until a couple of years ago. It was when I found out my now ex-wife, unfortunately, was pregnant with my son, that I had to address some of my demons. So I was like, I was about to swear, sorry. I am becoming a father. I have to stop certain patterns in my life, right? And it made me make a documentary about the relationship with me and my father, who I just told you was a drug addict. Without being resentful, I started to explore our relationship and our patterns and where it's from, right? So about 6 years, I was making this with my dad, and it really gave me a good overview of what were the choices I made in life and what were the causal, how do you call it, causal connections or something. What caused me to be formed in the way I was, and what made me have a certain reflex to do something in my life that was destructive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for about 6 years and really, really connected with my dad. We always had a great connection. But the funny thing was holding a camera in front of your father turned out to be a great filter, because whenever I would confront him eye to eye, we both would not really communicate because it was too painful. We didn't want to talk about the painful things. But for some reason, when there was a camera right in between of us, it worked like a filter or a buffer, something like that. And he would open up to me, and he would express his sorrow, he was sorry about a lot of things that happened in our past. And then there was the direct connection to his relationship with his father, the father who survived the death camps.
Yeah.
And of course, he grew up with a traumatized dad, and that is going to have an impact on you. That caused him to fill up a void, like a lack of love, fatherly love, to use drugs. And even though he was a very loving father, he a lot of things happened because of his drug use that had a big impact on my life, because you can just imagine the things you see when you have an addicted father. You're going to see some violence. You're going to see some, there's stuff you're going to see. But I made a documentary about it. By the way, I'm going to send it to you. It's on YouTube, and I subtitled it in English. You can see it. And I made that, and that was the self-therapy I needed.
Yeah.
It made me be aware of my patterns. It made me, take care of those patterns, to be a better person, I guess, or a better father. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm telling you right now. I'm a human being, but it helped me, knowing me and where I'm from, and helping my son fend for himself in the future. Yeah.
Man, that's good. Have you heard of the term generational curses? Have you ever heard that term?
Look, I'm living it.
Okay, well, you're aware of it, right? And yeah. So there's a scripture in Genesis that says that the sins of the father will revisit the sons to the third and fourth generation. So we're dealing with stuff that our great grandfathers didn't deal with, right? And so there's anxiety, rage, could be alcoholism to cope, right? This is how they coped with stuff. And as we grow, and I think as you're cognitive and you're open to connect dots, you start seeing characteristics and character traits that you start doing that maybe aren't good. I mean, it's just because if there's generational curses, then there's generational blessing as well. People who are born into wealth, people who are born into, they had great parents, so they become a great parent. And so we're dealing with that, and we're trying to right the wrongs of our ancestors. We're trying to, make sure that curse stops and ends with us. And I think that you having that conversation opened up the door to say, hey, I'm cognitive of some character traits that I don't like about myself, and I'm doing, and it's got to stop. I need to know where it came from. Yeah. And just asking the questions and being open and honest. Listen, like it comes with a lot of tears. It comes with a lot of forgiveness, and that by itself, forgiveness has the ability to stop those curses in its tracks.
Yeah.
Even yesterday, I watched a documentary on YouTube called "Child of Rage," and this was I
saw that.
Yeah, it was shot in 1990 about this little 6-year-old girl named Beth.
Was a psychopath.
And she was like, she was torturing animals, and her little brother, she's wanting to kill her adopted family. She's just like poking them and stabbing them, and grabbing his private parts and pinching and squeeze. Like, she was just sadistic, man. And and they're just interviewing her, you know, and it's almost like crazy, like R-rated stuff that the little kids just like having an open conversation, narcissistic, and like, yeah, I do this, I do that. But she was like severely abused by her biological father. Right. And so all of that abuse and all of that trauma that she carried, she's afflicting on others to try to, you know, whether it's, you know, she thought it was normal or she had anger issues, even at 6, you know, 5, 6 years old.
Victim becomes predator, yeah.
And hurt people, you know. And but yeah, they did an update on her, and her name was Beth Thomas, and ended up getting her like out of the house eventually, because she would fantasize about killing her parents, and she was hiding knives in the house and stuff, and something out of a movie. But she ended up getting rehabilitated and getting around a family, and you know, learning to love. And there's so much spirituality. I would say it's not spirituality, but hugging your children, touching your children. There's there's another documentary, the Zeitgeist Revisited, or Zeitgeist Addendum. I think it's part 2, but there's a whole section in there about holding your children, touching, even just touching them, and comforting them and stuff, and how that affection, showing them that affection that has the ability to create this bond, versus the kids who don't ever get touched, or, you know, like for me, my only relationship with my mom for the most part was, you know, was in trouble. You know, anytime I did something bad and it was like coming down with the hammer, there was no really affection. So that I carried that with me, not only me, but my brother and sister. And I got to see, you know, generational curses happening in my life that scared me. It became real when I seen it in my sister. My grandmother was a single mother, and she was a bartender. My mom became a single mother and a bartender. And then my sister was you know, she wasn't a single mom. Well, yes, she was for a little while, but she was a bartender, you know. And it's like father, like son, like mother, like daughter. And until you're aware, so hold on, I want to do something else. I want to be the first one in my family to go to college. I want to, like, whatever abuse that I've experienced from grandmother to mother to me, and now my kids, no, it stops with me. And so to be cognitive of that and do it, I noticed it in my life. And listen, I come from a background of abuse too. Like my great grandfather, and grandfather, they would beat their wives. Like, and we come from a place where it was normal to beat women. Like even like on TV, I think it was like the Honeymooners or whatever. It's like, why, Alice, I ought to sock you one. Like when the wife got out of hand, he would threaten her with a punch. I'm gonna give you the fist. And it was like they play the laugh track. It's like that was normal. But now, like, I come from seeing, you know, when a wife or somebody says something out of line, like they catch a slap like you would hit a man. And my grandfather and father and my brother, I seen my brother doing it, and it was coming for me, man. It was coming for me, and I had to catch it early, and I'm glad that I did. And you know, those curses stop with us, you know.
Yeah. It's if you choose to be aware of your patterns. This is funny because when we talk about spirituality, I always like to use the metaphor of the Kabbalah tree of life, right? Mm-hmm. So the tree of life is the symbol of Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
If you look at a tree, you see, you know, a tree and the branches, but what is holding the tree up? What makes the tree? It's the roots underground. And your roots are where you're from. Who's your father? Who's your mother? What is the place you grew up on? Where are they from?
Yeah.
How did they live? You know, and this just goes down all the way down. Roots go all the way down. There might be some patterns you have in your life you cannot be aware of, but it's coming from the past, right? So this, what you're talking about, is generational, and it's all intertwined, it's all connected. So if you try to be aware of your patterns, you know, you're going to be aware of whatever the choices you make in life, or what you do and not choose to do. So it's very important, you know, but a lot of people are not willing to confront their demons. It's painful because you're going to see an ugly side of yourself too. And that's hard, you know, that's hard for a lot of people, you know, their pain, they don't like to, you know, be confronted with pain or a mirror. Yeah, they choose to do some brain gymnastics and, you know, justify whatever is going on.
My first book I put out was just my testimony, and I wrote it a long time ago. I literally wrote it 17 years ago, but it came out maybe 5 years ago. And I only printed 25 copies. I did a pre-order just really quick and sold a couple copies, and I stopped production of it because I let my mom read it. Like, I was excited for her to read it, and I just kind of put it all out there. And she didn't read it until we were on vacation in the mountains. So we were stuck in the mountains together, and then she pulled it up online in an email. And so we're you know, 3 days into a 7-day vacation, and she pulls it up in the cabin and starts reading it. And I put stuff in there that was like, you know, pretty deep stuff that she put us through. And she had a panic attack up in the mountains. She couldn't breathe. She started hyperventilating because there's things that I wrote in there that I could talk about because I got healed from it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, I dealt with it. I brought it before God. I made amends with those demons.
Yeah, your writing process is therapy. You know, you go through it. You know, you relive it.
Yeah, but for her and for many people, you know, time didn't heal. They suppressed it. They hid it. They act like it didn't happen. Though, and really, it's a trauma. It's a trigger of PTSD. You know, and so you act like it didn't happen. You have a different association with the past. I never said that. I was like, yeah, you did. No, I didn't. And they forgot about it. They're good at, you know, you got to deal with it somehow.
It's called cognitive dissonance.
They never got healed from it, man. And so she read that. And my relationship with my mom is not the same today because she read it. And because it was hard to talk to her. She was crying and couldn't breathe, and it was just, and we had like 4 or 5 more days on vacation in the mountains together, and it made it super awkward at dinner. She wouldn't look at me. She couldn't talk. She would cry and break down, and she still does it. And so my hope was that she would continue to read like the end of the book, where it's like, this was my relationship with my mother, but now we have a great relationship. Now I'm able to tell her I love her and go through that kind of stuff. But man, you know, there's a difference between suppression and dealing with your demons and finding healing. And, you know, there's a big difference there, you know, and I try to champion that work. And
look, you and me, my brother, we're quite similar. There was a point I had to show this documentary to my father. He got so pissed. Yeah. He was infuriated. You know, he thought I was trying to harm him. He thought I was like, I was giving him the check, you know.
Like a villain, yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I had to make him watch it till the end, you know, because actually it was not like you know, trying to, you know, make him to be like a evil person. No, eventually, if you look at the documentary, you see the human side of him and you see where he's coming from. So I almost had to like contain him. Watch, no.
I wish I would have did that for my mom. Because it like 5 years of like just spiraling out.
Yeah, but then it got picked up in Holland. It was broadcasted on national television. 2 million Dutch people on a population of 17 million watched that. I got nominated for Best Documentary.
That's so cool.
My father, the people really embraced him, not as an evil guy, but as a human being who was dealt a bad cards in life, a deck of bad cards in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're all just human beings. And I kind of forced him to address his demons,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm happy I did.
Yeah,
because I did it for me, right?
Dude, so cool. Yeah, send me that documentary. I want to check it out, bro. And
for sure.
And yeah, we'll post it. We'll post the link on the in the show notes here too for other people who want to watch it and check it out. But Max, man, enjoyed this conversation, brother.
Yeah, likewise.
Ended in a different place, but in a good place, a place that can bring forth healing for other people to address their own demons and make amends with their past as well. So loved it, bro. Let people know where they can listen to your podcast and follow your work and all that good stuff. Let them know where they can check you out.
Yeah, for sure. If you go to YouTube, just put in Moszkowicz Podcast. You can see all my UAP interviews, even a bit more. I've interviewed Professor Jordan Peterson. If you're into that.
Oh, you did that? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I love Jordan Peterson. Heck yeah.
A while ago, and by the way, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's going to be a follow-up anytime soon, and Jordan is going to talk about UAP. So.
Dude, I love him.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, for sure.
It's interesting to have his take on what if UAP turns out to be real and extraterrestrial. What's it going to do with the human psyche? So I sent him a mail, and he was I think he was triggered by that topic. So, so I have good hopes. So yeah, on YouTube, Moszkowicz Podcast. I'm on Twitter, Max Moszkowicz. I'm on Insta, Max Moszkowicz. Yeah.
Nice. I'm pulling it up now. I got to check
You Business
out.
Radio.
Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out because I'm definitely a fan of Jordan Peterson.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah. But let's talk just a little bit about him just before we go. I didn't know that you checked him out and interviewed him. But like, what do you think on the his backlash and all of that kind of stuff that he caught from millennials, and the way that
Oh my
things are
God, we have those over here, dude. I don't know where to start. Jordan came to Amsterdam, and he was going to be speaking at the university over here, and all of them turned up, protesting and trying to scold him on some kind of gender qualification, racism or something. I'm not sure. Look, call me a conservative guy, but look, live your life the way you want, as a woman, as a man, as a bunny, as a werewolf, a brick. I don't care. I respect you. But don't try to force me to acknowledge you're a woman if you're biologically either XX or XY. That's just what it is. Live your life the way you want. I will call you her, zer, blur, blah. I don't care. I respect it. But the man is right. And I do think that his rules for life, the 12 rules for life, the book he wrote, are quite accurate. Look, if you're not able to make your damn bed in the morning, how are you going to judge anyone if you don't have your life straight? So before you judge anyone or call out racism if you were born in a white privileged family because you want to be called a woman or whatever, no, check yourself. I'm all for whatever Jordan is saying. I don't think that he is toxic or whatever. No, I think he's a man who's speaking the truth and fact, and I respect him very much.
Yeah, a voice of reason.
Yeah.
You know, and
a beacon of light.
Yeah, we need that for sure. We need pushback from both sides. That is how we progress. And so that a voice of reason, I think, is also very progressive to help balance all this stuff out, you know, in moving forward. Hey, don't get too ahead of yourself. You know, there's some dangers with that. So Max, thanks for hanging out with me, bro. Really enjoyed it. It's a blessing to call you a friend, man, and I'm sure we'll have many more conversations in the future, brother.
Oh, we damn sure will, my friend, the truth.
Yes,
And you know, I enjoyed this, and I think you're an amazing person, and please continue whatever you're doing right now. You're incredibly talented. I love your music. I love your books. Send me some of them. And yeah, let's hang around on each other's podcasts.
Yes, sir. And so next time, I guess the next conversation we'll do is when, you know, you come back on here and start talking about the different telepathic communication that you're starting to get from the UAPs as you're going deeper into the investigation of their reality. And so we'll talk about the spiritual connections that you're going to be having, man. It's coming, bro. It's coming, bro. You're next.
I will.
All right, brother.
All right,
many blessings. Thanks for hanging out, brother. Shalom. Peace.
Shalom. Peace. Ciao.
Man, good talk. Good talk. Listen, ended in a pretty cool place. You know, we talked about UAPs and UFOs and spirituality and nuts and bolts and all of that kind of stuff, but ended in a really personal place. Listen, you guys know that anything spiritual or far out or esoteric, it has to be grounded in some type of truth or some type of reality. And I'm going to continue to say this, like Manly P. Hall says that, you know, if the life of your dog isn't better because of your spirituality and your esoteric studies and beliefs or your Freemasonry or whatever it is that you're a part of, your religion, if your dog's life isn't better, if dad still kicks the dog on the way out of the door, then his religion is in vain. And I think I've heard that somewhere within the Bible as well, probably in the book of James, that faith without works is dead, that this is all in your head. It's all in your overactive imagination, these beliefs. So it have something to do with your character and the way that you treat people, and you're asking the deeper questions in life, and you're doing the inner work and the inner alchemy, if you will. That's what it's about. So we ended in a place that made it real and deals with real life issues. You know, and for me, again, it is connected to spirituality. It is connected to even UFOs, if you will, because everything is connected to me. So, you know, creativity, awe, and wonder, and belief, and imagination, and hope. You know, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so all of that stuff is connected. You know, of the reality of the spirit world, of the reality of heaven, of the reality of angels, or even demons. Like, if any of those people who have telling these stories that are even the far out ones, if only one of them are telling the truth, then for me it almost makes everything make sense. Like, it becomes a Trojan horse for beautiful things. You mentioned the movement of, you know, all of the progressive culture, and many conservatives see that as a Trojan horse for a lot of things to come in on the back of it, a lot of negative stuff to ride in on the back of said political issues, or whatever the case is, or social issues for that matter. But we need to look at stuff for the positive, a Trojan horse for good, a Trojan horse for a positive change in your life and in reality and in the culture. So if enough people are having these experiences and having these awakenings because of a podcast, because of they're going out stargazing and they're making their own connections, like, I do think that it is a step in the right direction for spiritual awakening for your own life. And if enough people have that awakening, if enough people are bettering themselves and the lives of their animals and their pets are better because they're more spiritual, then if enough people are doing that, then that's global awakening. And that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you follow Max. Make sure you check out his work on his podcast. Definitely go listen to the talk that we did. It was really cool. I think I was one of the first ones who that he interviewed that tied in a lot of spirituality and ufology and brought that to the table. So I think he got some dislikes. I think there's some interesting comments there, but I think the two are married, and we shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations about nuts and bolts versus the spiritual conversation. It is not just, hey, these guys are Trojan, are a Trojan horse. Again, Richard Dolan did the response to Corey Goode, and what he brought to ufology and what he's bringing to the table, which is storybooks and comic books and off-world experiences and being trained in underground facilities and jump rooms to Mars, where he lived 30 years and he comes back and only 7 seconds have passed, and all of these weird, grandiose stories. And so he calls it out. He feels like that is a Trojan horse. And, instead of being scared for calling names or saying stuff, we should be able to come together in reason and at least have the conversation. I think that it would be beautiful for Richard Dolan and Corey Goode to have a conversation, to play the devil's advocate, to ask questions, because if they were open to the conversation, both camps in ufology or UAPs, then they would get some understanding, and then they would progress. It would be very progressive. Just like the Jordan Peterson, to sit down with a journalist or somebody who is very progressive with the transgender movement and all of this other stuff that's riding in on the back of it. If they can sit down and have a civilized conversation versus only approaching it that off, from the gate, that you guys are wrong and you guys need to change and believe what we believe. Listen, I'm doing it for religion. I'm doing it for spirituality, and I am totally seeing change. I'm seeing what I've done with this platform change lives. Like, I get those messages every day to just be that beacon, to have a conversation. I don't think I'm doing anything super spiritual or something super special. I just had the conversations that people in my camp have refused to have since the beginning. They've never had it. They've always approached it with their mind made up, and they still do. Read the comment section. Go to my Facebook. Read the comments on some of the stuff where we stir the pot and we challenge the status quo. You'll see those people rear their head and they take a hard left when it comes to these subjects. And there is no nuance. There is no exploration. There is not. You can't even have the conversation or ask the questions. And that's got to change. That's got to change. So continue to live your life. Seek your truth. Speak your truth, but use compassion. Use compassion. Use long suffering. And I guarantee you that we will see progression in the spiritual realm, in the realms of ufology, every realm. You're going to have vice and versa. You're going to have positive and negative. You're going to have light and dark. You're going to have left and right. You're going to have up and down, east and west, north and south. There's always polarity, and the truth is probably somewhere right in the middle. You take the two far outsides of it and you let them sit down for a conversation. Most of them won't, though. So it's a special people who listen to this podcast and who are open. And it does come from asking to have that conversation within yourself. So just like we bring these two rival factions together to have a conversation, to get some understanding, you got to bring the rival factions together within yourself. And that happens spiritually. That happens psychologically within, and like looking at your darkness and sitting down with your demons, but bringing the angels to the table as well, and having that own inner dialogue with yourself. And then what is happening outside when there's progression, then there's progression within. There's alchemy within. There's things that you've been avoiding because you only thought it was this, and you have that dialogue within yourself. It's the only way that it's going to allow you to have that dialogue in the open with your family, with your friends, with your enemies, to bring that to the table. Listen, guys, this is deep. We need to get it. We need to get it down. Always be open to have that inner dialogue, that inner ear. All great thinkers have always done that. They say that there's people who don't. It's really hard to imagine that when you think about stuff or just reflection, or I think sociopaths or like people who don't do that. Like, they can do negative things and hurt people, and there's no remorse at all. And in that documentary, the Child of Rage, they talked about the little kid had no remorse. There was no like receptors there. She could do bad stuff to her brother and hurt people and think about killing people and tell you that she wants to kill you. And there was no remorse there. But as she got into a better environment and they would have that same conversation with her, the little girl just a couple years later would cry and would feel remorse of the person that she once was. I'm talking about at 6 years old, from 6 to 9, to be able to do a self-evaluation, where at first she couldn't even have the conversation. They say sociopaths are the ones that don't even have that inner dialogue. They have no conviction. The Bible says that your conscience can be seared with a hot iron. When you do something over and over again, especially when you go against your own convictions over and over again, that your conscience gets seared with a hot iron. And now you're doing things that are despicable, things that you would never do. Now they become normal because you've opened up Pandora's box. You're mentioning Auschwitz and mentioning the atrocities that went down in Germany, and like, what the hell? Like, where does that start? Where's the lack of compassion or respect for human life? A lot of that stuff seems so far away, so far-fetched that humans can do that, to where we are now. Like, that was normal to ancient man, to primitive man, to fight over territory, over land, over beliefs, over doctrines, over anything. They divide it right in two. It seems so far-fetched now that we could, that stuff can still happen today. But I think it does. And I think we are moving away from it, though, because we are having the awakening where everyone is having that inner dialogue. And I think that if enough people do it and it begins to be a part of our art, it becomes a part of our natural conversation, our podcast, it's in our music, it is everywhere. And then so a rising tide raises all the ships. And eventually, I think that our leaders will take notice, or those people who have done the inner work will end up becoming the leaders of tomorrow. And I think we're starting to see some of that trickle in. But the old world and the old paradigms aren't really wanting to release control of their power in those structures. But we have to be hopeful. We have to believe in a better future. And it starts with not projecting it or giving someone else the power, but taking your power back and having your own inner sovereignty of knowing who you are and asking those hard questions. Not with a guest on a podcast. Yeah, we can get there later, but it starts with being able to ask yourself, so that when you get on a podcast with someone, you don't get triggered, or someone says something to you or makes fun of you or whatever. You don't get triggered. You don't, fall off of that high horse or stumble and fall, because it's going to come. Those of you who are seeking a platform, listen, it's going to come. You're going to have haters. You're going to have trolls. You're going to have all kinds of stuff pop up. How you handle it is what matters. And you can be confronted with those same trials and those same tribulations 10 years ago where you would have failed that test. But now, when confronted with the same situation or the same circumstance, you respond in a peaceful, in a loving way, and you don't get triggered, and you don't freaking blow up and destroy or burn that bridge or self-sabotage something that you've worked hard to build. Even relationships, friendships, that anytime somebody tried to correct you, you self-sabotage and you lashed out, versus like, okay, yeah, I can see what you're saying. Thank you for sharing that with me. Versus, hey, let's fight. Or, hey, F you, man. Like, trust me, we've all been there. We've all been there. But it is about that progression. It is about the inner dialogue. Listen, pass the test. We are on this journey together. We are on the same team, regardless of race, religion, or creed. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bells to be notified whenever we go live, to get those alerts and updates. And we will do it again very soon, ladies and gentlemen. Peace and blessings. Shalom.
Your well so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine. You're so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah Podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.